Grant Shapps is here. Morning.
Morning.
How are you? Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us on the programme. What happened?
In terms of
your campaign?
So I came in obviously very late in the day, and but got off to a good start. The rules were then actually changed. They doubled the nomination figures from previously in order to speed through the competition, because we're keen to have a new leader in place. I would have been nominated on the old rules. I thought probably not on the new rules. And in any case, looking at the candidates, talking to all the candidates, as I was doing throughout, I actually came to a conclusion that another candidate had the right policies and could certainly be ready to do the job on day one as he walked into Downing Street, and that's, of course, Rishi.
Politics is brutal, though, isn't it?
Isn't it?
How do you feel about it this morning?
I very much enjoyed my time in the race. I think I came and spoke to you here on... No, not
all
you.
The time,
it was to Sophie, sorry, on Sunday. I was
We're
in
very
the studio.
similar, getting this all the time.
I can see things from the same pod. I was in the studio on Sunday, and as I say, I enjoyed the race. I was able to put forward my platform. I would have, on the previous rules, been nominated. The rules were switched. But as I say, Rishi has a good plan, which was the closest to the things that I was saying in terms of the need to tackle inflation, the need to grow the economy. And so I was pleased to back him, and here we are.
Well, you say that, but let me just remind our viewers a couple of things that you said and tell me why you've now folded in behind Rishi Sunak. You pledged to halt the planned rise in corporation tax, cut income tax by a penny, and spend 3% of GDP on defence. At the time, Rishi Sunak called those sort of pledges fairy tales and arbitrary targets.
Yes, he wasn't calling that, he was other people's, the generality. But let's just sort of look at this. Politics is, of course, about finding the best route through, and we're grown-ups. You have to look at where compromises exist. He is raising defence spending to 2.5%. I said 3. He's raising it to 2.5 from 2.3 at the moment. He is planning to bring down private individual tax, the basic rate, from 20 to 19p. So he's doing that, albeit that I was saying, well, couldn't it be done a bit quicker? But he is moving in that direction. He has just this week, last week, delivered the biggest tax cut that we've had for a generation, with a huge change in the threshold
that we've got the highest tax
national insurance
for 70 years, haven't we?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had the
so
only.
We can't really...
we've had the only pandemic that we've had for over 100 years, and yes, it's had a cost to it. That's true.
But I mean, okay. So even if you're saying that you're trying to do a similar thing, he was saying it was a fairy tale to try to do it in the timescale that you and others are suggesting.
Yeah. So there was a range, wasn't there? Just to explain this, there was a range of different, manifesto commitments, and some people saying they would go a lot further and a lot faster. I was saying probably something in between those candidates and what Rishi was saying. And so as I looked around, pretty logically, I'm looking for the person who was closest to my position and actually I thought had the credibility to do it. And I think the reason that Rishi has both of those things is that he recognises, as I did, that inflation is the biggest single issue that we must tackle. At 10%, it's extremely high. And the first thing to do is to tackle that. The second thing to do is to go further with tax cuts. And as he said yesterday when he launched, it's not a question of if there'll be tax cuts, there'll be a question of when there's tax cuts. And that's Rishi's policy. And again, I thought that was the right and responsible position.
OK, Rees-Mogg says he's a socialist. I mean, he's saying it as if that's a dirty word. What do you think?
Look, I think it's best if we just concentrate on the positives for each of our candidates and avoid sort of... perhaps others wouldn't agree, but in this context, quite extreme language.
Is socialist a dirty word? It's not to a lot of my viewers this morning.
Well, I mean, clearly a guy who, is fiscally conservative, wants to get the debt and deficit down and debt falling as a proportion of the overall economy. I mean, the idea that this is, socialist is clearly not true. But as I say, I think, and this is what I'll be doing throughout this campaign, it's best to focus on what you have to offer. Now, Jacob is supporting a different candidate. She'll be able to say what she supports. Rishi can say what he supports. People, the membership, will eventually make that judgment. And I think that is far better than trading sort of, disparaging comments as this was intended.
What do you think about suggestions that we should withdraw from the European Convention on Human Rights?
Well, look, the European Convention on Human Rights, something that we helped set up, has its purpose. I haven't specifically spoken to Rishi about the issue, but I don't think that it would be an early priority. The main thing is to get the laws working as we need them for us.
They're to make a better life for the people of Europe. The only people that are not in it are Belarus and Russia, I think.
Well, that's as I say. Well, I don't think it's part of any platform here.
Just to clarify, what then? Well, let me ask you about Nadine Dorries first of all. She's talking about dark arts and dirty tricks. Your campaigns always split the party, don't they?
Well, look, a leadership campaign
brutal
by the very nature
we'll use that word.
Are of course do have the potential to bring out differences. On the plus side, when they're done well, and we've seen this happen before as well, when Cameron and David Davis ended up battling it out in the final. It was actually a very good process for the party. Ideas were brought forward. People said, by the way, I remember that campaign, at the beginning of the campaign, oh, this is going to be brutal. Oh, everyone's going to be sort of bashing the heck out of each other. In fact, that's not what happened in the end. And I think here the same will be true. Of course, sometimes there'll be, lively debate. But in the end, I think, and I certainly know this will be the case with Rishi, he will put forward the positive case, others can put forward their case.
So what's wrong with offering votes to others? Why is that such a bad thing? As somebody quite close to you quite recently once said, them's the breaks.
Well, look, simply in this case, it just didn't happen. I think the idea was
Are you sure?
Yes, the idea, and not only am I sure, the person that was suggested, which was Jeremy Hunt, himself says every single person on his nomination paper is somebody who's very close to his campaign. So even he's rubbished it. Look, again, I don't want to... let's just focus on the positives.
OK, let's do that then. Talk to me about Rishi Sunak's very slick video. How long do you think it took him to cut that?
I don't think he personally cut it at all, but I know it wasn't filmed until Wednesday, so he'd already resigned. OK. And he wasn't planning to be Prime Minister until he resigned. He hadn't got a campaign up and running. He didn't have people in the background working for him. He didn't have an office. Well, what I think is the case is that he was becoming increasingly concerned about the direction of travel. There had been a long series of missteps as far as he was concerned, and I don't think it makes sense to pretend otherwise. We know that was the case. But in terms of the video, as you say, in terms of sort of actually pulling the campaign together, that part of it is from post his resignation. I know specifically the video was filmed on Wednesday.
OK. On Wednesday. I'm sure not all of it was.
Well, there was stock footage. There was stock footage in there from the 1960s. So you're right, some of it already existed.
Yeah, and other stuff had been filmed before as well. They didn't knock that together in such a short period of time. Well, unless you can prove otherwise, they can come on. The filmmaker can come on and tell me exactly how they did that.
The challenge the other way around.
You do politics. I know how to make telly. I know how to make those movies, and it takes a little bit longer than that. Trust me.
All I know is he sat down.
Sunak wrote to Johnson last week, questioning his competence, his honesty and his seriousness. Then yesterday, he said, he's the best thing since sliced bread. So why is he doing that? Why is he changing his tune?
Well, look, again, I think that it's clear that you can both be brilliant as an individual and also be flawed. And as Rishi pointed out, as I pointed out, in many times, actually, over the last year or two, Boris Johnson is a brilliant individual who did many remarkable things, including getting us through this Brexit nightmare that we lived through for 6 years.
But not good enough to be Prime Minister anymore.
Doing the vaccine, what's happened with the Ukraine and the way that he's been one of the principal leaders in the world, but obviously made mistakes. And like all of us, you can both be great and flawed, and I'm afraid it applies to every single one of us. I mean, there are no exceptions to that, are there?
No, there are not. However, being Prime Minister, it would appear that he still has quite a lot of grassroots support, and so Rishi Sunak has been reading the runes and thinking, I need to not knife him in the back anymore.
Look, I just don't agree with that at all. Rishi, myself, others, we all work very, very closely with the Prime Minister, and even right through to close to the end, to try to pull things round, to try to rescue a situation which, over a period of time...
Well, in the background, he was organising his own campaign, just in case.
Well, look, as I say, your particular allegation about the video, I think, is wrong, but
well, we'll see.
We'll see. All I know is Rishi sat down and recorded it on Wednesday, as I understand things. But clearly, anybody could see that there were problems. Anybody could see that things were going wrong. That does not detract from the fact that Boris Johnson has been remarkable in many ways. And it's a huge sadness to many people, many voters, myself included as a member of his cabinet, that he wasn't able to pull it around. And as you know, I personally thought that despite some issues, some misgivings, some shortcomings, I actually thought his advantages outweighed.
OK, the UK ambassador to Ukraine sat where you are last week and said they're going to crowdfund to have him in Ukraine because if we don't want him, they will.
Well, I know I speak to my opposite number, Alexander Kubrakov, who's the infrastructure transport minister in Ukraine, and he's a huge fan of Boris Johnson. But even more so, he's a fan of the way that this government has responded to Ukraine. And one thing I'm absolutely sure about is if Rishi, and I imagine even other people, were elected, Ukraine would be front and foremost of their plan. In fact, Rishi's funded...
Might be a bit busy trying to deal with our economy as well.
I was going to say Rishi's funded £2.3 billion to that battle in Ukraine.
Talk to me about our infrastructure. What on earth is going on with our airports and airlines?
Well, I've been very concerned about the way that their bounce back, or over bounce back in a sense, from COVID has caused all those queues and problems at the airport. I've been working with them. We've got a 22-point plan that we've put together with the sector, which has included changing the law to speed up things like the processing of security clearances, using some Brexit freedoms as it happens, and ask the airports and the airlines to be realistic about the programme that they run, the flight programme that they run, all in order to ensure that when the schools break up for the summer across the whole country, and they already have in parts in Scotland, for example, that we see the airports run as smoothly as possible. I should point out, this is not a UK-only problem.
Well,
the same issues are...
My viewers care about the UK. They don't care about what's happening in Europe. They care about the UK. Which airport do you think, according to our data that we've just done, which airport do you think is the worst?
I can't let you just dismiss the international nature of it. Aircraft fly...
Well, I just did. Which airport do you think is the... Well, I can, because it's my programme.
But you can't, because
yes,
aircraft fly around the world...
Talk to me about which you think is the worst airport.
I have to finish this point. Aircraft fly around the world, and when they do, the delays at other places also create the delays.
Which do you think is the worst airport in the UK?
Well, several airports have had problems. Manchester's been very well publicised. I don't know which is the worst. It depends how you measure it. It depends if it's passenger numbers or delays or percentages. Who do you think has cancelled most flights? Again, you tell me if you've got a number. It will depend how you judge it. We know that Manchester's had problems. We know that Gatwick's had problems. We know that Heathrow have shortened have lessened the number of flights that they have as well.
Do you feel that you've been concentrating enough on what's happening on our railways, given that you've been running a leadership campaign?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been working solidly.
Because the train drivers are going on strike now as well, aren't they?
Well, the train drivers whose average salary, median salary, is nearly £60,000 a year.
Doesn't take away from the point I've made.
I just don't believe that this is the right time for them to strike. The public, everybody watching this, every household pays £600 each to keep them all in jobs and all off furlough.
Still going on strike. What are you going to do about it?
And I don't think that is justified. And one of the things which I've talked about before is we have to modernise our railways. We can't have a situation where we can't run services at the weekends because we aren't allowed to put it in the contract that sometimes you work a weekend. We're not asking people to work 7 days. So we have to modernise the railways. Then we'll be able to get a settlement. At £60,000, nearly average salary a year, I think the public will be with us on this.
We're going to have to leave it there. We've got lots of things left up in the air. Hopefully we'll see you again very soon, and we'll see what happens. Thanks very much indeed.